Depending on who you ask, Gen Z workers are either drawing healthy boundaries between life and work, or they're just lazy. But what's the truth? And why do younger workers seem to approach work so differently compared to previous generations? Welcome back to the Work It podcast. My name is Nat, and today we are unpacking some stereotypes about workers from Gen Z. But how much of it is fair criticism, and how can we close the generational gap in the workplace? Joining us is 25-year-old CNA TODAY intern Ang Jie Chun, who has spoken to some experts about this divisive topic. Jie Chun, it is so great to have you on the Work It podcast set.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I want to do a little bit of intergenerational therapy here. So for the next maybe 2 to 3 minutes, I'm not Nat. I'm just speaking on behalf of all of the older workers in the workplace. And you are speaking on behalf of all the Gen Zs in the workplace. I'm going to shoot some questions at you and you just let me know how your generation feels. How does that sound?
Amazing. I can't wait.
Okay. So first one.
Yep.
Are Gen Z workers hungry enough to make sacrifices for their career? Or only hungry enough to make demands?
I really hate these kind of questions,
Okay.
Say are we hungry enough? Are we hungry enough to make sacrifices? Okay. Make sacrifices for what?
Mm-hmm.
People always say oh, your Gen Zs, your generation is so soft. You guys unwilling to make sacrifices. But what does that mean? Okay, you want me to make sacrifices? Okay, sure. But what am I getting back in return,
Next question. Who are you to want meaningful work, a great boss, flexibility, high pay, rapid promotion, and work-life balance all at the same time and in your first job?
I mean, why not? I remember growing up, a lot of my elders, they always tell me that, you go through this structured, you go to poly, you go to university, you come out, you have an easy time finding job. You can't just bait me when I was younger. You can't just say this kind of things to me when I was younger, right? And then afterwards, expect me not to have this kind of expectations when I finally graduate and enter the workforce, right?
So why do you think that you know better than someone who has worked in this company for years and years?
If I don't give an idea, you say I'm not productive. If I give my idea, then you tell me, oh, you think you know better than me.
Okay, that's fair. I understand that you've also prepared some questions for the older folks, right? So I want this to be a two-way street. So what are your questions that you have for us?
So let's say I'm an intern, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you give me a lot of work, are you sure it's about giving me the chance to experience work, to experience things? Or are you just abusing my contract?
Honestly, sometimes it's a little bit of both. This valuable work experience, right? It often comes from doing real work. And you just can't get away with that. But I'd say that you should be thinking about whether you are being stretched by your manager who thinks you could do better, or if you're being used, because those are different things.
I'm being given a lot of work that's way beyond my pay grade. Why?
Because growth is beyond your pay grade. Nobody gets promoted because they mastered the responsibilities that they already have. Otherwise, I'm just going to make you keep doing the same things. So if you are saying this isn't in my job description, I'd tell you that neither was half the stuff that I learned and I had to do to get me to where I am today. What else do you have?
I'm done with work already. Why must I still stick around the office?
Well, I agree. My question is, why can't you? But if you've genuinely finished everything, then leaving early shouldn't be an issue lah. But this isn't school, right? When you're in school, you finish your assignments, you finish your lessons for the day, you can go home. But this is work. And work never finishes. So if you can prepare for tomorrow's duties, if you can help colleagues with unfinished tasks, all of this shows that you have the initiative to do beyond your capabilities. And that's what separates the good workers from the best. And that's not a generational thing. That's just a worker differentiation. So you feel a little bit more understanding of the thoughts of the older people and their frustrations with Gen Zs?
On the very last point, when you said helping colleagues with work or just preparing things in advance, I genuinely think it's because of we still currently lack the experience. We still don't really understand workplace norms and stuff, or maybe we don't really understand. We're still trying to grasp and fully understand interpersonal relations, working relations. So as a result, we might, and when we enter the workforce, might be still very me focused. I'll just do my work. Once I'm done with my work, that should be the end of it. Don't bother me with your other people's work. But at the same time, I do see value in helping colleagues finish their work as well.
Hopefully some of our Gen Z listeners and viewers feel the same way as well. But I understand you're working on an article about Gen Zs in the workplace. So in your research, what were the most common stereotypes about Gen Zs that older workers tend to have?
One of the complaints were that Gen Zs do the bare minimum at work. Gen Zs don't respect their seniors, their elders.
Okay.
And another is that Gen Z takes work-life balance. They only focus on the life balance part and not really on the work part.
And if I were to call your manager right now, because you are Gen Z, right? Would she think that you fit these stereotypes?
I hope not.
Well, we have a special guest with us. No, okay, I'm just joking. But with these stereotypes, right, let's dive into them a little bit. We've been hearing a lot about Gen Zs not being hungry enough. What's driving this perception from older workers thinking that Gen Zs are not hungry enough, they're lazy, they don't want to do work?
I talked to several HR consultancy managers. A lot of them brought this fact up, is that Gen Zs are more likely to draw a limit on how much work they want to do or that they can do. But on the flip side, when I spoke to Gen Z employees in the workforce about this, they feel that, no, it's not that they are not hungry. It's that they feel like sometimes it really is a fact that they are given so much work to the point that they don't feel that they are being compensated correctly. It's really above their pay grade.
But what makes Gen Z so special? Because I feel like I've known people in previous generations, they have had to do work that seemed not equal to the remuneration that they were receiving for that work.
I think the difference is that Gen Z has more information now. They have a wider, more broadened view of how work should be like. So I was talking to academics about this, on why is Gen Z so different from other generations, right? Millennials also, they went through like 16 to 18 years of structured education, right? Similar to Gen Z. But what separates millennials and Gen Zs is that Gen Zs grew up in an environment which is less hierarchical. And they also grow up in an environment where they're encouraged to speak up. Then combined with access to like almost unlimited, unfiltered access to social media now, right? Gen Zs are able to see what other Gen Zs, what other people, in places like China, in the West, they're thinking. So as a result, Gen Z has a lot more access to information, a wider perspective on how work should be like. They have reference points, so to say.
Right, so they have higher aspirations because they have access to more information.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've heard from friends, right, about Gen Z workers in the workplace being a little bit frustrating to work with. For example, there's a research assistant who joined this company and was insistent that he not do any of the research assistant roles because he thought that he was able to do all of the research analyst roles. So he wanted to analyze data, not do data input, not do data gathering, and he wanted to write reports, but he didn't want to do this, what he referenced to as like grunt work, which left his millennial and older colleagues a little bit frustrated because they had to pick up the slack because he was outright refusing to do this work, right? So have you had similar experiences, or have you done similarly where your boss asks you to do something and your first thought is like, no, that's not the scope of my job. I refuse to do that. I will do work that is in line with my job description.
Yeah, low-key, this podcast, coming to this podcast. So I'm kidding.
Okay.
I actually have a very similar story to yours, actually.
Okay.
The interviewee that I spoke to, she's been there for a year or two, whereas the other person is a new hiree. The new hiree refused to do all the groundwork, like you said, which made my interviewee very frustrated as well. Like if you don't do the menial work, she says, you won't really understand how the rest of the other workflows, how this menial work actually affects the other workflows as well.
Yeah.
So I think employers have to really balance or try to. You give Gen Z the experience, but at the same time, you cannot just ask them to do all the menial work. Do it, right.
Okay, but if I'm the manager and you're telling me that I have to do this menial work with my Gen Z employee, I'm going to say I have so much other things on my plate. I don't have time to hold your hand through this menial work. And rightfully, you're supposed to be doing this menial work. How are you getting frustrated so much earlier than everybody else? Like, everyone has had to go through the same thing when they were coming up in their careers. So what makes you so special?
The answer to this is actually because Gen Zs are very afraid of failure.
Okay.
So there was an academic expert I spoke to that he voiced out that a lot of Gen Zs now, they are very afraid of failing at work, making mistakes and everything. combined with the fact that, the job market now is so tough, right? Very hard to find jobs. They feel like if they mess up once, it's over for them. They're not going to get a conversion offer. Their resume is not going to look sparkling good to their future employers. You don't know what you don't know, and then you can't blame Gen Z for not knowing. They're going to want you to hold their hand for a bit, show them and teach them the way to do things correctly. And also, if you want them to be a team player, you also have to be a team player yourself.
But what if we're kind of breaching the boundaries for typical work? So let's say your manager calls you outside of working hours, like you work 9 to 6 and they call you at like 8 p.m. Would you pick up?
Is my manager going to see this?
I mean, for sure.
Honestly, on principle, no. But,
on principle?
Yeah,
okay.
Because if I'm being paid for 9 to 6, right, then, you call me at 7 p.m, like, I don't feel it's right. But I feel like, at least for me, like if I have a very good working relationship with my manager, or I understand the value of my work, the meaning behind the things I do, then I'm more likely to pick up my manager's call. But I think most importantly, right, at least for people my generation, right, if it's something that's very serious that you really need my help with, right, I feel like you call twice.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If I'm not
So
answering,
if you get one missed call and then you get another ring, then you're like, okay,
this
I
is
will
serious.
pick it up. Okay.
Yeah, or at least drop me a message.
So some people who are listening to this conversation about calls outside of work hours, they might be thinking, I had to work weekends. I stayed late after work. I would pick up calls from my manager. Why should Gen Z be any different? What would you say to them?
I would say, this sounds rather toxic, like, just because I suffer, you must suffer with me as well. Like, come on.
Right.
I mean, if you can make the workplace, we can make work like lighter for everyone, easier for everyone, but more productive, more fun, even more relaxed. Why not? It's not that we don't want to do work or like we don't want to be team players. It's the fact that does work have to be really like that?
Right. Where do you draw the line between healthy boundaries? How do you weigh that versus not pulling your weight for the job?
Honestly, I think that's a very hard thing to balance. I drew the boundary at is it too much work for me to handle?
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that if the work that's being given to me, the amount of work that's being given to me, am I able to complete it on time? And most importantly, am I able to give a quality work? Rather than, I keep taking in all the works that my manager wants me to do, but then I produce subpar work, or I am unable to produce that work on time. If let's say my well-being is affected, I feel like the quality of my work will drop as well.
Right.
Yeah. So if you want me to produce good work and on time, then I feel like you cannot negatively impact my well-being.
Okay. So you're saying that managers have to be aware that you are also thinking of these things. You're not just a mindless drone that does the work that's assigned to you. You're thinking of the quality of your work now as well as the quality of your work tomorrow. But sometimes work is seasonal, right? There's going to be crunch periods. There's going to be times in which the entire team is going to have to pull more weight.
I feel like it's a very give and take situation. It's not that I'm just going to completely ignore my colleagues, my team, just because my mental health is I feel like my mental health is being affected. It's more like I'll inform my teammates that I will be able to work up until a point. After a certain point, I might need a bit of rest before I can continue helping the rest of the team. It's not say that just because I feel like my mental health is being affected, I'll straight away just like throw out my hands and say it's not my problem.
Right. So you're saying there needs to be communication about these things, right?
Yeah.
You need to know how to structure your time. You need to know when you're able to take a break.
People get disappointed or people get frustrated when the expectations are not met. Let's say the work, the crunch period is extended to a certain timing, another timing. I think like regardless of generation, the employees' morals are going to definitely get affected, right?
Mm-hmm. So I want to touch on the other stereotype that you mentioned, that Gen Z doesn't respect seniority in the workplace. Do you respect your editor?
Loaded question. Of course.
Okay. So why? I mean, it's clear that you maybe are not the typical Gen Z that this stereotype is based on. So why has this stereotype come about?
Some of the older generations, they're a bit more conservative with their thinking, in the sense that if they ask their Gen Z employees to jump, they expect them to ask how high and not why.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the HR experts I talked to, they said that some of the older generations, they are not used to people speaking out, vocalizing their opinion, especially if their opinion is something that is going to sound contradictory to what opinions they hold themselves. If let's say somebody has a complaint or thinks that they can, or they have opinions that they think they can do better, or they have their suggestions that can help improve the workplace, they might trample upon what the previous generation has built.
Right.
So as a result, it may come off as disrespectful to them.
They take it as a personal offense
attack
almost.
on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between speaking up and just being difficult to manage, right? How well do you think that Gen Z workers are able to navigate this difference?
Gen Zs, we enter the workforce fresh with new ideas, new ways to do things, or at least we think that they will help the workplace. But then it may not match the realities on the ground, may not match the realities of the companies that they are in. And the way they talk as well sometimes may come off as rude. But I feel like it's just a lack of experience kind of thing,
Right.
They are still not accustomed to workplace norms, not used to communicating things in a friendlier way rather than coming off as rude or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's an expectation versus reality kind of thing. And also
Yeah.
just, they haven't navigated these waters. And so sometimes they don't really know how to operate. But in your opinion, after having spoken to these HR people, these recruiters, these employers, some Gen Z people as well, what kind of support do you think Gen Z workers need and are looking for from employers that they're not getting sufficiently today?
One thing they're not getting sufficiently is mentorship.
Okay.
So I had another Gen Z interviewee back when he was interning at this finance business company. He was part of the IT team, so he had to help out with coding and stuff. But the thing is, no one, not his colleagues, not his managers, not his supervisors, nobody mentored him at all. So he felt that like he was doing work, yes, but he wasn't learning anything. A lot of these HR experts as well, they pointed to the fact that a lot of Gen Zs have voiced out that they want mentorship. They want people to guide them along. They want people to show them the way, teach them how the workplace is like and everything.
But some would say that mentorship is not a one-way street. Like it's something that mentees are supposed to request of a mentor, and that these mentees should respect that the mentor has their own thing to do and may not necessarily have the time to hold your hand through, your workday. So what would you say to that?
I feel like again, this is an issue of communicating your expectations.
Right.
Because at least on Gen Z's end, they may not know what they want, or they may not know that they can request or certain things. So I feel like the onus should be on the older employers to take the initiative and then lay out like a mentorship plan so that it sets the expectations so that Gen Z know what to expect at the workplace, what kind of help they can get. And another thing I noticed about Gen Z is that nowadays, right, they're very worried, if whether or not in the next few years they're gonna get fired from their workplace.
I think that's a non-generational feeling right now.
Yeah, but I think it's worse now for Gen Zs because a lot of companies, they are automating, they are reducing the manpower needs for a lot of entry-level roles.
Okay.
But then guess who's just entering the workforce? Gen Zs. So you're reducing the amount of entry-level positions possible for Gen Zs to take up. So, when Gen Zs do manage to get these roles, they want to feel like, the company is investing in them. The company is going to at least retain them for some time before, maybe letting them go or whatever. So they want to feel like they are being invested in. And if you invest in them, I think you're likely going to build like a very good rapport with the Gen Z, right? They're more likely to stay longer rather than just job hop.
But there are going to be others who won't appreciate or like an unrequested mentorship, so to speak.
The older generation may think they are mentoring, but then to the younger generation, it's like, oh my God, it's micromanaging me.
Yeah. So how do we reconcile this? Like if I were your boss and you just came in, like let's say today is your day one under podcast, right? And I was your manager and I say like, hey, Jie Chun, I'm going to mentor you. I'm going to run you through what it takes to be a podcaster, and like today's your first day of your new life. And you weren't quite on board with that. How do we fix that?
For older employees, right, they have to explain the reasoning, the whys and purpose behind everything. Like there's a reason why, I want you to do those things certain way. Like for example, like podcast, using the podcast example, right? You have to explain to me like, okay, we are doing things this way, we are setting things up that way because X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C, because of this reason and that reason.
So it really boils down to communication.
Yep.
Okay, so on the flip side, what do Gen Z workers themselves, you included, need to take more ownership of in order for this whole workplace, generations aside, to feel more cohesive and to be able to thrive?
there's only one thing we should take more ownership of. And
Okay.
that's just work. A lot of Gen Zs, we come to the workplace, we have the idea that, okay, I'm going to come to office today, I'm going to do my work, and then I'm just go home.
Right.
Yeah,
Like a
and
job is a job.
a job is a job. Yeah, that's it. Like they don't really, they may not feel pride from doing their work because they may not think that it's meaningful or whatever. But I feel like this is a very difficult thing to request of an entire generation because
Okay.
Gen Zs are so diverse. You really have those people that have a lot of drive, ambition, but then you really also have those people that they just want to get by, easy, cruise along. So I think generally, at least, Gen Zs have to show that they are taking more ownership of their work, or at the very least, take ownership of their ideas.
If you could speak to a manager who is currently struggling with an entire team of Gen Z workers, what advice would you have for them to make for a better team, better workplace, and maybe retain that Gen Z talent and not have to go out into the market and look for new ones every now and then because their Gen Z workers are frustrated?
Pay them more. I'm kidding. I mean, it's not just about money.
Okay.
Believe it or not, good vibes.
What's a good vibe though? I feel like that's so generic, right? Like, is it just like have lunch every day together, tell me about your day?
Just make an environment where everyone feels comfortable with talking with each other. An environment where people are friendly enough to talk about their day-to-day issues, their daily life, their hobbies. Make an environment whereby people just feel very welcomed in general. That was what one HR expert told me. Like she said that Gen Z nowadays, they're not just looking for material benefits. That would be nice to have, material benefits, more leave, more pay. But at the same time, they want to stay. They're willing to stay in an organization that has these good vibes to them.
Okay.
I also feel like this good vibes thing is super subjective because it's vibes. Like vibes is subjective. So, but a general advice would be to not just focus on the workplace environment. Like it's not just about having lots of nice snacks in the pantry, but also cultivating an environment whereby the employees are just people that are very friendly. They're very welcoming. They're willing to make small talk, small chatter.
Well, I can already see the comments coming in about I, as a whatever generation, I'm here in the workplace to do what I am paid to do. So I'm not paid to make vibes good for you. What do you have to say to these people who are probably coming in with these questions right now?
Don't be so boring, leh. I mean, yeah, sure.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay.
I mean,
Everybody would like a nicer workplace to work in. Well, Jie Chun, thank you so much for reminding us to listen and understand before jumping to judgment. Hopefully this heals some of the generational trauma across generations in the workplace. We'll catch up with your editor to see what she thinks of your thoughts in today's episode. If you want to read Jie Chun's article, it'll be out this weekend. Just look out for it at channelnewsasia.com/today. But we'd also love to hear from you. Have you ever clashed with a colleague due to generational differences? Whether you're a Gen Z, a millennial, Gen X, boomer, or whatever generation you come from, if you have struggles with somebody from another generation, we would love to know. Just write into us by commenting wherever you are listening to this podcast from, or you can email us at cnapodcast@mediacorp.com.sg. My name's Nat, and remember, the future of work should be shaped by every generation.